Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm super excited to have you here for another deep dive. Today's explainer is basically a giant puzzle, connecting the dots between massive macro geopolitics and very specific localized domestic crises. We're going to pull data straight from recent reports to see exactly how international posturing in the Middle East literally ripples all the way down to regional water disputes, local economic realities, and some incredibly intense political standoffs in South Asia. So, let's jump right in.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Strait of Hormuz standoff, move over to the Chenab water dispute, check out South Asian economic realities, look at the ideological protests, and then wrap up with global passport rankings.
Okay, Section 1. The Strait of Hormuz standoff and rising U.S.-Iran tensions.
To really understand the current tension, we first need to look at what actually triggered it. According to the source material, it all starts with a U.S. initiative called Project Freedom. Now, this is a reported military posturing involving 15,000 American troops, and the stated goal? To forcibly keep the Strait of Hormuz open for commercial shipping and escort vessels right through the area. The source points out that this aggressive posture is essentially throwing down the gauntlet in waters that Iran heavily monitors.
Well, Iran's response to Project Freedom was immediate and very physical. They didn't just put out a verbal warning, they drew brand new red lines. As the source details, Iran released a new territorial map, drawing a straight line connecting Oman's separated borders directly to Iran, which effectively claims that whole transit zone. They've even ordered commercial ships to physically move away from Ras Al Khaimah and head toward Dubai. Plus, they warned that any U.S. or Israeli ship entering this newly demarcated zone is going to be targeted. In fact, the source reports a claim from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that they've already fired 2 missiles or drones at a U.S. warship that ignored their warnings. Now, it's worth noting the U.S. military actively denies that happened.
So, you might be wondering, why is this escalation happening right now? Well, the source points to one very specific metric, 35%. That is Donald Trump's reported approval rating, which has apparently remained stalled exactly there, alongside a 64% disapproval rating. What makes this data point so fascinating is that, according to the source, this rating hasn't budged even after a recent assassination attempt. The strategic analysis here suggests that with domestic popularity stalling out, there's a really dangerous temptation for leadership to seek a major foreign distraction, or maybe force a deal with Iran, just to secure a political win.
Moving right along to Section 2. The Chenab water dispute and regional tensions in South Asia.
To really set the stage for this dispute, the source highlights the intense military rhetoric that historically surrounds this issue. Take a look at this quote: "If you stop our water, we will stop your breathing." This is attributed to the Director General of Pakistan's military media wing, Ahmed Sharif. I mean, that starkly illustrates the ultimate red line drawn by Pakistan's military establishment regarding water security. They absolutely frame it as an existential threat.
But here is where that fierce rhetoric meets a very different reality. Despite the heavy warnings, the current data on the ground tells another story entirely. According to Pakistani official alerts cited by the source, India has reportedly halted water flows to fill its Baglihar Dam, and this action is actively creating severe water shortages downstream in the Chenab and Jhelum rivers. The real-world impact right now? Pakistan's absolutely essential Kharif monsoon crops are severely threatened by drought. The source points out a major disconnect here between the military's past warnings and the current reality of a very real agricultural crisis.
All right, let's zoom in even further. Section 3, South Asian economic realities.
Let's look at how regional governments have handled the economic shockwaves of recent global conflicts, specifically when it comes to petroleum prices. We're looking at data cited by Mohammed Zubair, and the contrast is pretty jarring. India has passed a 0% hike onto its citizens. Bangladesh, just a 10% increase. But meanwhile, over in Pakistan, petroleum prices have skyrocketed by a staggering 56%. The source argues this highlights a unique scenario where the massive burden of global instability is just being aggressively passed straight down to the public.
And you know, that 56% hike is just one piece of the puzzle. When evaluating Pakistan's wider economic standing in the region, the metrics are honestly pretty sobering. Compared to its neighbors, Pakistan currently suffers from the highest tax rates, the highest electricity prices, the highest inflation, poverty, and unemployment rates, and on top of that, the highest policy interest rate. And conversely, it has the absolute lowest GDP growth and investment rate in the region. This data paints a very clear, structured picture of a multifaceted domestic economic crisis. Which brings us to a deep underlying friction within the country right now. The source notes a really profound disconnect between official narratives and the reality on the ground. On one hand, you've got official claims of macroeconomic progress, marked by high-level luxury travel and claims of regional prestige from government leaders. But on the other hand, the hard data shows citizens literally buckling under heavy taxation, unprecedented utility costs, and plummeting investments. It's really a tale of two entirely different realities trying to coexist in one nation.
Okay, next up, Section 4, Adiala jail protests and the legal battle of Imran Khan.
The source details a very specific call to action issued by Imran Khan's sister, Alima Khan, directed at the party's leadership and supporters. She outlined 3 highly structured, actionable demands. First, immediate access for family and legal counsel at Adiala jail, specifically noting that he is reportedly being kept in isolation. Second, a demand to transfer him to Shifa International Hospital for an independent medical exam in the presence of his own personal doctors. And third, a direct call to the Chief Justice to ensure an immediate hearing for his and his wife's bail applications. The source really emphasizes that these demands are strictly focused on legal and medical rights, not political favors. So, to understand why that third demand for an immediate bail hearing is absolutely crucial, we have to look at the timeline of the £190 million case. According to the source, for roughly a year and a half, requests for bail and sentence suspension have faced continuous delays, or they've just been outright ignored by the courts. Now, the Islamabad High Court has finally scheduled the main appeal hearing for May 7th. However, the source argues that by scheduling the main appeal so late in the game, the courts have effectively bypassed the earlier requests for sentence suspension entirely. They say this illustrates what is essentially a heavily compromised and pressured judicial system.
Finally, we've arrived at Section 5, Global Passport Rankings. The final indicator?
When you compile all these domestic and regional realities we've been talking about, how does the rest of the world actually view you? Well, the latest data reveals the absolute bottom 4 global passports in terms of power and access. They are Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and Pakistan.
So, Pakistan ranks exactly 4th from the bottom globally. But here is the most striking observation the source makes about this specific ranking. Just consider the other 3 nations on that list for a second: Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. Pakistan is the only country in the bottom 4 that is not currently fighting an active, devastating, kinetic war within its borders. Yet, due to the culmination of the massive economic and political crises we've just explored, its global standing is mathematically grouped right alongside active war zones.
Which leaves us with a final overarching question to ponder today. How does a nation balance severe domestic political instability and crushing economic crises while simultaneously trying to navigate high-stakes regional geopolitics and massive resource disputes? The friction between the official narratives and the hard data points to a really, really complex path ahead. I hope this explainer helps structure these interconnected issues for you. Keep analyzing the data, and we will see you in the next explainer.